What's going on, everybody? Welcome back on into the Space Cowboy Show. I'm your host, Ricardo, and it's the last mock draft of January, guys. I'm shocked how fast time is going by. January is typically a long month to start things off, but it's just crazy to me how fast we are going through this year already. And on top of that, in case you don't know, Super Bowl matchups are already set between the Patriots and the Seahawks. And we're going to be going on 30 years with the Dallas Cowboys being in the NFC title game, let alone the Super Bowl. And so we want to look at what we've seen this postseason, but also in past postseasons to what the Cowboys can learn to try and adapt and overcome and eventually get to where we want to see them. Before we dive into all that, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, hit that notification bell. It helps out the channel a lot and supports what I'm trying to do full time. Also, if you haven't done so already, please be sure to go check out the other shows on the Crushman Media Network because the show is powered by Crushman Media. Now, if you want to just skip to the mock draft, completely understandable. Here's the timestamp at the top of the screen. But there was one topic I wanted to go over before we dived into this mock draft, and that was what we can learn from this postseason or postseasons past to see the Cowboys succeed in the future in the postseason. As you're well aware of, the Cowboys haven't won back-to-back postseason games since the 90s, and we're looking at a team that has the longest drought that's active to not appear in an NFC title game. And so what can the Cowboys learn? We're seeing from teams like the Patriots, the Seahawks, Broncos, Rams, etc. There are many ways in which you can definitely win football games in the postseason, but the key thing is being able to run the ball effectively and efficiently and have a defense that can hold its own, generate pressure, and have takeaways. I know that sounds so generic, but it's better seen than just talked about. When we're looking at what the Seahawks are doing, like belt to ass to a team like the 49ers, defensively, offensively, special teams, or even with what they were able to do against the Rams, or even going over to the AFC side of the bracket where you're seeing the team like the Patriots shut offenses down, and on top of that, just being able to not even have the best offense on the football field. They didn't have to score a whole lot of points, but they're still able to win football games. That is where I think we need to see a shift with the Dallas Cowboys. There's nothing wrong with having a dynamic offense. We saw it with the Rams, and that led them to getting to the NFC Championship game. Granted, if you really want to dive deeper in on that with the Rams, you saw that they were in a dogfight with the Panthers. You saw they were in a dogfight with the Bears. But you know what's very key about those components? Obviously, you want to have those two components on the offensive and defensive side of the ball and your special teams come through. But good coaching matters. And we have seen throughout the Mike McCarthy era, and even you can go back to the Jason Garrett era and then some, the Cowboys being unprepared for playoff games. And that is going to be the recipe for success if we want to see this team win in January and February. Do the things that I mentioned on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, but Brian Schottenheimer is going to need to adapt and grow as a coach and prepare this team to win. And I think that he can do that. He's getting his guys in the room to help coach this team up, and right guys at that, from great coaching trees or guys that are extremely talented from what we're seeing. And I think that that is going to be the recipe for success for the Dallas Cowboys. They're trying to right now build up on that run game. We saw that with the Tyler Booker selection, and hopefully we can continue to grow on that. And then defensively, they're going to need to do a lot of work this offseason, but I think if we put everything together, we can be put on the right track for a good 2026, and especially with what opportunities will open up. And again, we'll talk about all that once the season's over and we start seeing the team getting put together in the offseason. With all that, I want to go ahead and dive straight into this mock draft. We got those 2 first-round selections. Let's go ahead and start off with pick number 12 for the Dallas Cowboys.
With the 12th pick, the Dallas Cowboys select
Sonny Styles, linebacker, Ohio State. Now, in this particular mock draft, we got wiped out by the corners and the edges, so I believe the next way to pivot is going the best available defender on the board, and Sonny Styles was that. Of course, you have other linebackers on the board like Anthony Hill Jr., for example, but a guy like Arvell Reese was not on the board for the Cowboys to select because there are arguments of who's the better linebacker coming out of Ohio State. Is it Reese? Is it Styles? In my opinion, you can go with either one, and I think that you're getting a very talented defender. You look at what he's bringing to the table, a guy that's able to defend the run extremely well, can fly all around the football field, having that lateral quickness that you need at the linebacker position, and you plugging him alongside a guy like DeMarvion Overshown, as long as DeMarvion Overshown recovers as I think he should be able to, the athlete that he is, and the work ethic that he has, pairing these two alongside one another is going to be damn effective for the Cowboys. The other thing too is that you just straight up need to bolster this linebacker room. And I think adding a guy like Styles does that for you. You get a certified stud in the middle of that defense, because when you look at what the Cowboys have done with the defensive end and even defensive tackle room, really the big thing they're going to need is a pass rusher, because defensive tackle wise, they're set. The edge room is more or less just needing that one or two guys that can really generate pressure for you. And if Donovan Ezeraku can continue to develop, and on top of that, you get another guy that can come in and be a stud for you, whether that's in free agency or the draft, I really like what I'm seeing from this defensive line room. And we have seen that with teams that have built their defensive lines up, they have seen success in the postseason as well. We need physical football on this football team. And I think that is exactly what we're going to be seeing so long as the trends continue. You add a guy like Christian Parker, coming from Vic Fangio, coming from Vance Joseph, coming from that particular line of tree, and seeing what they've done, because you can look at what the Broncos were doing, you can see what the Eagles were doing defensively. And if we can get anything like that, I think this Cowboys team is going to be set defensively for quite some time. Now, the other thing, too, is that getting a guy like Styles, I know that there is going to be some Cowboys fans that will think getting an off-ball linebacker at pick 12 is a bit much of a reach, don't you think? Because you can probably use that on an edge rusher or a cornerback, or even trade down. I've seen that several times in the comment section. Why don't you trade down? Now, if it were me with how this panned out, Sonny Styles typically goes in the top 10, but things have been starting to change. I would probably look to trade down if I was the Cowboys, and not be afraid to do that. You're going to need to get some day 2 draft capital, but at the same time, it's really going to come down to the scenario that we're going to get. I don't think that the Cowboys would just stick and pick, but then again, we said the same thing about Tyler Booker. They were looking to trade down with the Texans, and then there was reports that the Texans were coming up for Tyler Booker, but it is what it is. But at the end of the day, you are getting a fantastic athlete in Sonny Styles, 6'4", 243, with the speed that he's shown and the ability to play the linebacker position that he's shown at Ohio State. I think that you're getting a fantastic player. And if Christian Parker can work his magic on a player like Styles, I really think that this could really help bolster your defense even further, without a doubt. And I don't even have to go further on that. I understand when it comes to off-ball linebackers, it's not the sexiest pick. It's kind of like when you talk about taking guards or even tackles in some instances with first-round selections. I get it. Linebackers are not the sexiest pick whatsoever, but sometimes they are necessary, especially if the player is worth the selection. I believe a guy like Styles is worthy of a first-round selection, even as high as this, so long as the draft boards hold with where we're at right now. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into pick 20 to see what we did there.
With the 20th pick, the Dallas Cowboys select
Colton Hood, cornerback, Tennessee. This is a name you guys need to be familiar with as we're going through the draft process, because I really see a possibility of Colton Hood rising up draft boards to where he can be a top 15 selection. And to go a little bit further in on that, similar to what's going on with Ohio State between Reese and Styles, is similar with what's going on between Hood and Jermod McCoy. For those that are unaware, because you haven't been watching college football, especially out in Tennessee, Jermod McCoy suffered an ACL tear, which sidelined him for 2025. But with that, this allowed a guy like Colton Hood to really take over and really showcase his talents at the cornerback position. And the reason I want to talk about Hood and why I think he's going to shoot up draft boards is what he put on film this year. You look at what he did, 4.4 speed, a guy that has fluid hips, that's able to give you great production when it comes to playing cornerback. And I think that is something that when we talk about what the Cowboys look for, especially in a cornerback, and we've seen this happen several times, they look for guys with particular traits and attributes that they can look to be coached up at the NFL level. Now, there are a couple things that do worry me with a guy like Colton Hood. And the first thing is he doesn't play the run very well. That's something that I noticed on film immediately. And I think that that's something that can bleed over into the NFL, of course. The other thing, too, is limited game action. He only started 6 games, but when he was on the football field, very productive player for the Tennessee Volunteers. And I think a pick like this would happen if the Dallas Cowboys lost out on another DB they were looking for. Mansour Delane was gone. Of course, if you wanted to go with McCoy, he was gone as well. And really the best corner available was Hood. And the other thing too is, and some people will say, well, I don't see it with him being a first round talent, maybe a second round talent. The thing that I would hope the Cowboys would do if things really got pushed to shove was trade down and take him later in the first round. But if the Cowboys were to stick and pick and they went with the DB, this would probably be the selection. And with looking at what Christian Parker has done with DBs over the years, especially with his time in Philadelphia, I really do think that if you can get a guy with fantastic attributes, I think Parker can definitely coach them up or put them in the best position available to be a fantastic player for you in this defense. Now, do I think that this would be a bit of a reach for the Cowboys? Maybe a little bit, to be honest with you. But again, considering you don't have any day 2 picks, really kind of ruins your flexibility. But also, I think that Hood will start moving up draft boards as we get closer to the NFL draft. Now, before we close things out, I know a lot of people want to see particular names and see, oh, we need to go with this particular pick, or we need to trade down and all this other stuff. I want to just be very clear. When it comes to doing these mock drafts, I can only speak for myself. I try to go in different scenarios because you need to be aware of as many names as possible that aren't as popular, number one, but number two, things that are outside the norm. And I think that you might end up possibly being in a situation where, hey, what if an offensive playmaker comes to you at pick 12? Do you take them? Do you trade down? We'll go through all that as we get to that point. But the key thing I tell people all the time, never say no one's going to be available at a particular spot, because the NFL draft, again, very unpredictable. You never know what can happen. And I think that is something we get caught up in, is that, oh, Reuben Bain, he won't be there, or Caleb Downs, he won't be there. Jeremiah Love, if you want to go on the offensive side of the ball, he won't be there. You don't know that. And I think that's going to be something that you have to consider depending on how the offseason goes, because let's just say they don't re-sign Javonte Williams. Do you go after a guy like Jeremiah Love? I personally think that he's worthy of a first-round pick. I think he's that great of a running back talent for a team like the Cowboys that need a dynamic running back. But at the same time, you shouldn't force the pick whatsoever. So with that, I think that concludes our final mock draft of January. I will see you guys next month. We'll talk about what's going on over at the Senior Bowl at some point once I get time to do that. And then we'll talk about what defensive free agents the Dallas Cowboys need to look to re-sign this offseason now that we have the coaching staff in place on the defensive side of the ball. With that being said, guys, I appreciate you watching to the very end. I hope to see you guys in the next show. And with that, have a great rest of your day.